Hey guys, Loz here and welcome to Cities Skylines. Now this is my first YouTube video and what will be the first in a series on Cities Skylines where I attempt to make, the way I imagine this in my head, if you picture, look, to be completely honest, I only have a picture of a single city between, a single village between in a valley where down the middle where the river flows has been cut into canals. So I imagine. So I decided then to go. You know what? Why just do one? Let's see if we can create something that is what looks like a lot of large mountains side by side. I'm trying to go with something that looks a little bit like there's been a lot of tectonic activity, maybe a little bit volcanic, and you know, at first, as we see here, it just looks like a giant 7 or 8 fingered hand has slapped the underside of the terrain. It will start to look a little more natural as we continue. I didn't like the way that centerpiece looked, so I go ahead and just change the shape a bit so it's not just that same curved line that everything else is. So what I'm doing, I started off with a very thick large brush just to create the main lines of the mountains, and then we're just going back and forth, smoothing, raising things up, lowering it down, and then smoothing it again, just back and forth. So back to my plans for this. What I really, the picture was stuck in my mind of, you know, just these stepped streets down the side of either side of a valley, down to, you know, 3 or 4 canals in the middle, with a village down in the center, the main part of the village. So, and now that they've added all these cool new in-game tools where you can add canals and you can modify the terrain, it should be relatively simple to do. Now, I have to openly admit, I have not tested anything on the mountainsides when it comes to editing the terrain. I'm not sure. I'm fairly confident. I'm sure I'll be able to, you know, adjust the terrain to suit my needs when it comes to the street, the width of the street and the width of the houses or commercial buildings or whatever I decide to put in there. So as you can see, the landscape is starting to take shape and it is starting to look a little more natural. So what we're looking at is a very, as I mentioned, a very naturally formed multiple mountains pretty much in parallel with each other, all coming off a central point. And down nearly all of them, there will be rivers flowing so that we can create those canals. It's going to be really interesting when we get in the game to see how much turning a shallow river into 4 or 5 parallel canals is going to mess with the water flow. I might need to play around with that a bit as we go, but we'll find out. So here we're going ahead and, you know, we're trying out some water sources to start with, just to get a rough idea how the water flows, and just, you know, mapping out in the path that they're going to take, just to see that it all does actually work. And I'm starting, you know, at this point I'm starting to realize this is just going to look really silly, having 4 or 5 water sources all just coming from their own independent points. So that's where I decided to, you know, bring them all back into a central large, what would be a very large river off the edge of the map. So go ahead and cut that out and just add a whole lot of water sources back there. Leave all the existing ones in place just to add a bit of volume. There are some lakes starting to form where there's hollow sections between the mountains. So, you know, and that bit there, that was way too steep. It would have been nice if, now that I think about it, it might have been nice to create a waterfall, but we'll just leave it with the rivers as it is. So, you know, as you can see, I'm just adjusting the terrain little by little to get the water flowing the way that I want. Now, So because I want to create canals up these rivers, I want, for the most part, to have a pretty consistent gradient wherever I want to build. We can have big deep lakes and really steep parts of the river where it's essentially rapids off map or just towards the edges. But I don't want the bulk of the map to be just this crazy high flowing rivers like we can see is currently there. So guys, this part is all just about, you know what, I honestly have created one map before. This is my second map that I've ever created. So some of you might have better methods of doing this. Please let me know in the comments if you think there's a better way. If you've got a method that works a lot better for you when it comes to creating a map and creating something really nice, go ahead, let me know. I'm really keen to find out, because I want to improve this, and I would like to do possibly another series where I create a whole new landscape and a whole new city, and if I can use some of your methods to make it that little bit better, I'm more than willing to. So now we're just going back through just what I realized was the in-game, I've not actually used the in-game landscape editing tools yet. So I had the thought just in the back of my mind that there might be limitations on how high or low how much you can alter the terrain. So I decided to go and make a lot of these rivers where I'd ideally like to be placing some of the canals. I decided to start making them quite shallow, so that when it comes to the in-game editing tools, I will have no dramas at all raising it above the water level or below, well below, editing the terrain, and just to make sure I can get those canals in there all parallel and have it looking really nice and consistent. Now, as you can see over to the side here, we've got a water source that I didn't realize was just flowing off the back of the map. Now that's one thing that I'm not too sure about with this game, is the way they've created the physics and the water flow is amazing. When it comes to City Builder, I've never seen anything quite like this before. It's the only downside is it will flow off the edge of the map if it finds a point where it's higher than sea level, not just flowing down to where the ocean is, which in a way makes sense. If you could have you might just end up with one end of the map just slowly filling up with water until it becomes something like Waterworld with one tiny little island in the corner. But it would be nice to be able to pick which sides of the map the water can, what's the right word, evacuate from, which side of the map the water can flow out of, rather than just all edges. There is some really crazy water flow here at the moment, so I'll go ahead now. What I again realized is with the varying heights of all these water sources up the top, it looked a little bit ridiculous just with a massive amount of water spurting out the side of a mountain. So again, I'll go ahead and adjust them all to get them all down very close to each other. Now I'm basing the height off the lowest point on that back edge of the map. So it's not flowing over the back, all the water's flowing down the rivers where we want it to, and it's all at the same height. Now, yep, again, I'm going back through and smoothing a lot of these out. I wasn't sure how I felt about it. Some of these mountains have large peaks down either side of them and a hollow through the middle. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, but we'll in game. So here I go, just make again more fine tuning of the water flow. I'm starting to use smaller brush sizes to tweak things a little bit, and bring it up, lower it down, just to get those height markers so that they're all pretty even. There's no big changes where I want to be adding the landscape that I want to create in the game. And yeah, I go ahead and notice that I've got a water source inside a mountain, so it's creating this weird flow. Okay, so where are we up to? And okay, so at this point I noticed that there's only a tiny bit of water flowing through there. So I want more. I want that to be another river. So if you look carefully at the height markers, a lot of that down this main river on the side was encouraging the majority of the water to flow down that way. So I just start digging out and making it lower on the left-hand side of this river. If you're looking upstream, we're making it lower on the left-hand side just to encourage that water flow to just start more and more, just tweaking it a little. Now I'm also from the little island, the little mountain there, I'm creating a point that comes out towards the middle of the larger river. So as the larger river hits it further up, it divides the stream a little bit more, just until we get the right amount going down there, so it looks cool. Now we need to start adding scenery. So look, I am just going to, for the most part, just add trees. I'm not going to go into heavy detail. I'll be doing all the heavy detail when I'm in game and I can design the scenery around the city. I want it to look amazing once the city is built, which means I am going to be making a lot of changes to the landscape and the scenery while I'm building each district, the city as a whole. As the city develops, I'll be developing the scenery. So we're just mixing a few different brush types and a few different types of trees and just gradually scattering it all around. Yes, and being, with the idea in mind that this landscape has been created by potentially a volcano, the land itself should be very fertile, and just go ahead and make all of the land fertile. It's very mineral rich as well. I forgot to mention that earlier. We added a lot of minerals in throughout this landscape. So you'll see this speckled, the brown, so the grayish color from the ore, and the yellowish for the highly fertile land.
The other thing I didn't think about while I was creating this terrain is having somewhere for all the inbound ships to come in and dock at a port. So I went ahead and created this little bay where a lot of the shipping will come in. There will be a few other areas around the map, but this will be the primary place for any ports.
Now we're adding the inbound-outbound connections, firstly starting off with the seaport, while at this point I still hadn't decided where the road and rail network were going to come from, how it was all going to work, which sides of the map, all that. So I decided, the obvious easy one to get out of the way first would be the ship connections. It's pretty close to this little bay that I've created where there will be a lot of ship activity. Now, next most obvious is air traffic. Now I did create this part of the mountain that I've just taken the flight path over. It was the most obvious to me as a nice big place. If I do decide to actually put an airport in, it should go there. I just felt that was the place to be. And I also noticed that there was this large river where the water flow hadn't settled down, and it looked like it had just created this large rapids that were just going crazy. And I was wondering, I was trying to think, do I change it? Do I try and fix it to smooth it out? No, it looks kind of interesting. We'll just leave it and let it go. If we don't like it, once we've started building the city, we can use the in-game tools to alter the flow and just see how it works out. After getting the sea and air traffic sorted out, we've got the flight paths, we've got the inbound outbound connections for the sea. I decided that there was only, for the style of map that it is, it only really made sense to me that the inbound and outbound road and rail connections should all come from one point, with the thought that this type of landscape is very isolated. So, being a very isolated landscape, it would have been very difficult, if near impossible, to actually get highways and rail into the central point. So I went ahead and picked this spot up near the top right corner of the map and started with the roads. Now, I did actually want to have these tunnel underground. I'm not sure why it wouldn't, but that's when I decided to bring them down the side of the mountain. I have seen roads like this, constructed like this in the real world, so I thought, that's probably the most realistic option. There are some places, there's actually probably a lot of places where arterial roads are built along the side of a mountain, or just on the edge of the ocean, where it's probably a little bit too steep for in the traditional method where they cut the landscape out and build the road on what remains. I've seen a lot of these where they're up on the stilts and they're just along the side of the mountain with no alterations to the landscape itself. Now, this took a few attempts. The game kept creating these weird high and low points in the road, and I kept retrying, and then I eventually realized, hey, look, I forgot I can turn the snap off. And then I was able to create something a lot smoother. And of course, then went back and did it all. Now, to help get to try and get the angles right, I probably could have done this better. You know what? Yeah, I should have gone back and retried, but you know what? This part of the road, you probably won't even be able to see it from, in game, unless I use the mod to unlock all the tiles. So the way I generally build roads, I know this does not look great. It's pretty average, to be honest. But the way I do it is, and trust me when I say it normally looks a lot better than this. But the way I do it is I start both both directions from the same point, following the same path side by side, and then reverse one. That makes it a lot easier to get the angles the same, the curves the same, because you're creating the initial point where, I'm not actually sure what it's called, but the reference point for the curve. And as you can see here, I've just gone back and fixed it all up to be back the other direction, but I still go on bringing it down this way. Now, what I then decided here was the crossing point needed to be somewhere far enough up the river before the water flow started to go a bit too steep like it did at the top. We'll probably make some alterations to that once we've started building the city and unlock some of the tiles. And yeah, here you can see that method where I've created that very similar curve. Now, again, I know these roads are not great at all, but I actually did that with the complete intention that I'm going to rebuild nearly all of it once I'm in the game, once I'm in the city, and I know where I want the highways to be, how I want the highways to fit around the districts, and I don't just want it coming straight down the middle of one of the islands, but we'll work that out once we're building the city. So now with the roads done, it's time for rail, and I was deciding between either 2 rail connections coming in from this same point or just one, with having the sea connections down the other side of the map. I don't want to make it too easy to get goods in and out, so I decided to just go with one. As you can see, I'm just creating the one rail following the same path as the roads. Again, I'll probably come back and recreate all of this once I'm in the game. Alright guys, that's it for this video. If you like, dislike, you hit those buttons, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to see more, there will be an episode every week until we've built a city as big as we possibly can on this landscape. I'm going to have a lot of fun with it. If you want to see anything in particular as the city grows, put some comments in. Let me know what you want to see. And don't forget to hit subscribe. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.